Hello, everybody. I'm Dark Life, and I'm here to kind of introduce you to a new segment I'm doing on my channel here. I'm going to be talking about League of Legends Mid-Season Invitational, kind of breaking down the tournament and the format and compare it to Worlds and see how they differ, the type of teams, the competition, and yeah, I just want to kind of talk with you guys on my video here and yeah, I got an intro and everything, so we're gonna test it out and see how it goes. And feel free to leave any feedback. So the mid-season invitational is upon us. It's been going on for, as of this time, it has been going on for 4 days now. Um, the actual proper group stage, not the play-in stage, the actual group stage has been going on for 4 days as recording of this video. And so far, it has been a pretty crazy tournament. Some very interesting teams and games just coming into this tournament. I was expecting it to be kind of the way that it's gone, but not exactly the way, and we'll talk about it a little bit. But the big thing that I want to talk about in this video is the format, or kind of MSI versus Worlds, I guess. I'll talk about the teams in a separate video, specifically their performance, kind of champions that those teams should probably look for, or pivotal champions for specific teams. I'll break that down a little bit. But for this video, I want to talk about more the format and kind of how it compares to Worlds and why the MSI may to some people may be more entertaining than Worlds and vice versa. So yeah, we're just going to get right into it here. The first thing uh, that obviously with MSI is that it is a champions tournament, so only the number one team from the League of Legends professional league regions participate. That includes the minor regions as well. They play in the play-in stage, but which there was also a play-in stage at Worlds, but they play in the play-in stage. It's a little bit of a different format than Worlds, and they kind of try to work their way to the main group event. The play-in stage consists of two groups, 4 teams each. Only the number one team from each group actually advances, so there's no top 2 seeds advance. It's just the first team, the team with the best record at the end of the group. It's a double round robin. 6 games. Team with the best record makes it out. Tiebreaker rules are the same as normal. They can get crazy, but usually they never really get that. The competition in the minor regions is typically not too much parity. A lot of the regions, there are certain regions that are just significantly stronger than the rest. And the number one seed advances, and then they play against 2 teams in a BO5, and it's kind of a pseudo double elimination type situation where they play a best of 5 against another team that's typically a major region team. So like in this case it was Liquid and Flash Wolves from North American LMS respectively. They were waiting for one of the 2 teams. I don't know how they chose the teams. It's usually at random. And they play a best of 5. The winner of that best of 5 goes to the main group stage. The loser isn't out yet. The loser goes to a loser's bracket, and they play the loser of the other best of 5. And the winner of that will take the last slot in the main group stage. So in the end, we get 6 teams for the main group stage. And compared to Worlds, just right off the bat, it's just significantly less teams that participate at MSI compared to Worlds. It's pretty much half the teams. I think at Worlds it's like 24. They've expanded it since the plans. It used to be 16, but if you include plans now, it's more like 24 because you have multiple seeds from the major regions. Even some of the minor regions like Vietnam, they actually get 2 seeds because of their performances in recent history. So, um, so yeah, double the teams almost. Well, I don't know about double, but definitely significantly more teams. I think it's maybe 13 teams at MSI. So yeah, you're looking around double. If it's 24, you're looking around double the amount of teams. I'm pretty sure it's 13 teams because they combined Latin America North and South, so now there's less regions technically. So yeah, it's double. It's about double, and yeah. So just right off the bat, there are less teams at World or less teams at MSI compared to Worlds, which means that this MSI is a little more. Some people would probably think this is more limited, but because it is only the teams that actually win their regions, it becomes a champions tournament, and it's the absolute best team. The team that wins their region. If you win your region, you are the number one from your region. There's a lot of arguments to be made that, well, the team that won doesn't mean necessarily they are the absolute best. In some cases, this might be true, but at the end of the day, the team that wins represents at MSI. They're the number one team. They go to MSI and they perform and represent their entire region. So just from that, usually the teams that win the regions are pretty damn strong. I think there were very rarely situations where a team that wins a region isn't that great. Like, I think the only thing I can think of is probably like maybe back in the day, like NA, some of those teams, like maybe 2015 CLG wasn't that great, or LGD from China. That was one. LGD from China was just like they kind of came out of nowhere and did not do well at all in the group stage of Worlds that season. So very rarely are the teams that win their region are just like not the best or one of the best. So this should be a stronger tournament, right? If you're taking quality over quantity, basically. And in some cases this is true, but it also is balanced out in the sense that it is earlier in the season, and earlier in the season, after spring split, teams are newer. The off season, a lot of teams make big changes, and sometimes teams just aren't collectively, ready to go. Like Cloud9's a great example of this last year in 2018. And spring split, they started off very strong, and toward the second half, they really, meta shifts, and they kind of faltered and fizzled out. And they got swept in the first round of playoffs last year. And then by the time summer hit, they were one of the worst teams, and they were really able to ramp up, and they had a completely new roster, and they really figured themselves out by the time Worlds came around. So that team was completely different. If that spring team was that way by the time summer hit, that spring team would have never done that well at World. It wouldn't have made top four, and that's what they ended up doing. That Cloud9 roster ended up going top four at Worlds, the first time we've seen it since 2011. So, just teams typically are not at their best point in spring, typically. There are other arguments to be made to say that, well, what about RNG? And I think that's a great counterpoint example to say that RNG at MSI time was much stronger at spring compared to when they were at summer. And it's not to say that they weren't good by the time they hit Worlds. They did win their region again. They did win Rift Rivals after that. So it's not like they kind of fell off, but they were not as dominant as they were in spring. So, you could make the argument that teams could be weaker around springtime, and then so having less teams, kind of counters that. Even though they're number one, kind of counters that. So there's a lot of arguments to be made for that. Me personally, I think that to me MSI feels more like an actual tournament, and I really like MSI. I just want to say that I love both the tournaments. I really like MSI. I think it's a great addition that Riot has made to the tournament format. I think it's a really just, it fills that void in between spring and summer. It actually uh, places a value on spring, you know. Kind of before the spring split, before 2015 when it first was introduced, it was just, oh, you can go to the All Star event, or you just win spring split and you come back next split. There wasn't really, it just, they also did IMs and stuff like that. So, um, this, it was kind of like, what's the point of really trying at spring? Now there's more of an incentive, not only, or there's more of a reason to really, try during spring, because if you win, you go to MSI, which is, you're going to get practice that no other team in your region is going to be practicing, most likely, unless you're boot camping in Korea. You're going to be playing against teams no other teams from your region are going to be playing on stage. You're going to have all this experience that other teams will not get. And and if you don't win, but you still do well, you get championship points, which help you in summer. If you get enough championship points, you don't have to worry about running the gauntlet, right? Cloud9 here. I know we know about running the gauntlet. I would love to just not have to run the gauntlet and just make worlds, either by winning or just qualifying. I would love to not deal with the stress of the gauntlet, and that's typically because teams who do well in both splits, or who are consistently top 4, top 3 in both splits, are the ones that will represent at Worlds. So there is a reason to care about spring. And so the MSI is, I think, a lot of people have kind of taken MSI as Worlds with the fat trimmed off, because you don't have all these extra teams there, and it's only the best. And to me, it does feel more like a tournament. It's, there's no like multiple group situation. Like, you are only playing, like, when you make the main stage, and this is another thing I love so much about MSI, there's no such thing as an easy group in MSI. None. You can't make the excuse, like for C9 or H2K or whatever, when they made top 4, what's the excuse? Well, they had an easy group. Well, you can't really make that for C9, because they had a pretty fucking tough group in the RNG Death group last year. But you could, for previous years of C9, before 2018, people would say, well, they got carried by SKT, or they got carried because this team was in their group and they were terrible. In MSI, you don't have that excuse, because you're only playing against the very best. You're only playing against the very best. You're playing against the number 1 Chinese, the number 1 Korean, twice, because it's double round robin. You play 10 games total. You play twice against the number 1 from all those regions. So the European team, the North American team, the Chinese, the Korean, the Vietnamese, and the LMS Taiwanese team. Those are the 6 regions. You're only playing against them. You don't get split up. You play in that group. And you eliminate the, oh, you got an easy group excuse or whatever, because you're playing against the very best. You're not you can't avoid the Korean team. You gotta play them. You're not avoiding the Chinese team. You have to play them, and I really like that. I really like that. It feels more tournament like. You're not avoiding anybody. You can't really avoid anybody in MSI because of the way the playoff format works. Because 4 teams make it out. The bottom 2 are eliminated. Top 4 make it out, and they play in the semifinals. And so, if you're a 3rd or 4th seed, you're either playing, and the first seed chooses who they want to play out of 3 and 4. And if you're a first seed, you get to choose your opponent. But if you're the first seed, you've shown that you're the best team in the group stage. So that's your reward for doing well in the group stage. So you get to choose your opponent, who you feel may be the best. In 2016, this wasn't a thing, so RNG, who was the first seed, automatically got seeded against SKT, who actually was the 4th seed, and they lost to SKT. If this rule where they could have chosen their opponent in the semifinals, they undoubtedly would have chosen the other team of Flash Wolves, because CLG was the 2nd seed. They couldn't have chose them, but they would have definitely taken the Flash Wolves over SKT, and they probably would have made finals, and then CLG would have had to play SKT. So that's your incentive of playing and getting first in the group stage. You get to choose your opponent. In Worlds, it isn't like that. In Worlds, it's You have a number one and two teams get out of the groups. There's four groups, four teams each. So there's 16 teams in their main group stage. Playing stage works a little bit differently, but at the end of the day, there's four teams, four groups. There are certain rules. You can't have more than one team for a region, so you can't have two NA teams in one group. You can't have two EU teams in one group, etc., etc. And there are also different pool seeds, so you can't have multiple pool one seeds in a group. You can only have two pool two seeds in a group, and they have to be obviously from different regions, and then only one pool three seed for every group. Because of the fact that they're all the number one teams, they all play against each other. They all kind of feel each other out, and nobody's getting blindsided by a team they never played against during the tournament. And I think that's why we, generally we see just better BO5 series. I think there was only one MSI final where it was just a complete blowout, and that was 2016 with CLG, SKT. And to CLG's credit, they did play pretty close games for it being a 3-0, but they were just outclassed at the end of the day. There was no, other than that one, there hasn't been a sweep in the finals. There's been a 5-game series in the first year, and then two 4-game series the last 2 years. So, like, generally, on paper, these are higher quality matches compared to Worlds, where the teams get better as you go up, but the results don't always reflect that. And I think the one World Championship where you can really say that this is like truly like the top of the line was probably 2016 Worlds, when you had Rocks Tigers SKT play each other in the semifinals, which is highly regarded as the absolute best of 5 series in League of Legends history. It's hard to argue that. I'd have to agree that I don't think there's been a better professional BO5 in our history. But there was also a really damn good finals with Samsung and SKT after that wasn't at the same level, I wouldn't say, but it was still really good League of Legends, and it was easily the best world final we've ever had. And that was the only 5-game series that we have, or full 5-game series that we have had in the world's history. The rest have been either sweeps or 3-1s, and pretty convincing 3-1s, not very close 3-1s. So, those are kind of the big difference, the quality of the teams and the gameplay, and I think that a lot has to do with the fact because everybody is playing against each other. Everybody, gets to hit each other a couple times. And with Worlds, you could get an opponent that just is not prepared at all for you because they didn't play you at all in group stage. Now, obviously, it's not an excuse because the best teams are going to adapt and they're going to prep and they're going to win. The best teams are going to do that. And that's where we see more variance. Typically, we don't even see number one seeds actually win Worlds, which also adds to the magic. That's why, to me, when I talk about Worlds, I look at it more as an event than a tournament. To me, it's an event. It is the culmination of what League of Legends is. It's not. It's more than just a tournament. MSI to me is a tournament. It's structured. It's formal. It's it really pits again like who is truly the best. Worlds is more it's a lot more luxurious and it's got suave and it's kind of it wants to and as it should, and I'm not saying this is a bad thing. It should be that because Worlds is the last big event of the year for League. It should go all out. It should go to these exotic countries and beautiful venues and big stadiums and sold out crowds. It should do that and have this production value and all the AR concert stuff. It should be like that. I'm not saying it shouldn't. But it feels more like an event more so than a tournament. And those are the differences that I see when it comes to MSI and Worlds. And some people don't get excited about MSI. Some people are like, yeah, I don't really care to see Flash Wolves at MSI. I don't really care about the LMS, and we have to see them because, well, they beat the playing teams, and it's not like I can avoid them in the group stage, they're playing against everybody else, whereas, at Worlds, you can say, well, my team's in this group, so I only really care about this group. I don't want to watch this group with boring teams in it, so some people look at it differently. And yeah, I mean, everyone's got their preferences. I really like MSI. I think some cases MSI can be better than Worlds as far as actual um, gameplay or quality of gameplay. I think that there have been MSIs that have been better than Worlds. Um, but as far as, League of Legends and just, Worlds is an entire month. It's a whole month. MSI is 2 weeks, maybe three if you count play-ins. Um, so like a little under a month. Like Worlds is like a little bit over a month, not under. MSI is like a little bit under it. Like I would say, it's about like 2.5 weeks really, um, and if you again it depends if you count plans, but MSI feels more like an actual tournament to me. And a lot of people have said, like I said before, a lot of people consider it a worlds with the fat trimmed off because you don't have those extra seeds and extra teams there, and those, you know, in some cases objectively weaker teams. I mean, it's not always the case because again, we don't very often see number one teams from regions winning worlds. In fact, I think the last number one seeded team to win worlds was probably 2015 with SKT. After that, 2016 SKT was the number two seed because Rocks Tigers won. 2017 it was Samsung, who was number three team from Korea. And last year was Invictus Gaming, who was the number two seed from China. And in fact, the only number one seed to even make it far enough was Fnatic. Before, other than Fnatic, the other number one seeds got eliminated at quarters. So, and I think it was KT and RNG. They got eliminated at quarters. So we don't see number one seeds win worlds really that often. But it doesn't necessarily mean that the games are more entertaining. Because there are some regions just are stacked and just have really good teams. China is a great example of this. In fact, I'd say China is more so than Korea now. I feel like Korea's definitely taken a significant step back. I feel China's a lot more stacked nowadays than Korea. So, their top three could all be contenders, and even though maybe Korea nowadays isn't as good as they were, but back in the day, I was talking about it before. Samsung was the number three seed from their region, and they won worlds pretty damn handily too. Aside from their group stage, they rocked the knockout stage. They only dropped one game the entire knockout stage against really good teams, might I add. They beat their own Korean brethren in Longzhou. They demolished WE, and then they played SKT in the finals and swept them like it was nothing. So, like regions have shown to be stacked. So you kind of see multi-talented region or teams with multiple contenders, and that's kind of the fun of Worlds. It is a month long. It's the biggest event of the year, and you get, and the Cinderella stories are way cooler at Worlds. You get a lot more of that at Worlds. The MSI, they're not as Cinderella-y unless it's like unless like PVB makes finals, or CLG when they made finals, that was a pretty Cinderella run story. Maybe even G2 in 2017 was a little bit of a Cinderella story as well. But it doesn't have that same feel of Worlds because it's Worlds. Worlds is the championship that you want to win, the championship you want to play in. The thing that everybody wants to win. MSI is cool, and people would love to win MSI, of course. But like, people want to be a world championship. There's no, if you win MSI, it's like, oh, it's just MSI. Yeah, you won MSI, that's cool, but whatever. But if you win Worlds, there's no like, you just won Worlds. Like, no one's saying that. It's like, oh, you won Worlds. Like, no matter what you did before or after, you won Worlds. Like, there's no, but like, you won the world championship. And I think that, it should be like that because it is Worlds. It just is, it is Worlds. It is the biggest, it has this history, it has this production and this suave, like I mentioned, like the suave, this like feel to it, this grand, uh, divine kind of feeling about it, because it's the, you get commemorated forever, you get immortalized forever for it. Um, and MSI, it doesn't have that same feel, and maybe as time goes on and as regions get stronger, and and we're kind of seeing this now as regions get stronger. Maybe we'll see MSI kind of rise up more in the numbers department, and more people are watching, and kind of putting more weight to MSI, because it does matter. If you do win MSI, that is a big deal. I mean, that's not a joke of a tournament. That's it's a really big deal to win MSI. It's the second biggest tournament of the year for League, and maybe we'll see uh, more weight added to it as we go on. But yeah, those are kind of some of the differences between Worlds and MSI. Just wanted to talk about something. I was trying to do something new for the channel here. I will be doing an MSI breakdown of the teams, kind of what champions each team should look for, how they've been playing so far, because we are 4 days into the event. Tonight, day 5 starts, so we'll find out who makes that last spot in the bracket stage, and then we'll look toward semifinal matchups, and kind of look at who the favorites are and how we feel about it. So yeah, let me know what your favorite event of the year for League is, or any esport event for that matter. If you What you like maybe more about MSI than you do Worlds, or what you like more about Worlds than MSI, if you agree that it feels more like an event rather than a tournament, whatever it is, if just let me know how you feel. How do you feel about this year's MSI? Do you think it stacks up well as far as the hype compared to previous years? Do you think it's been an entertaining MSI? Just drop a comment and let me know what you think about it. And yeah, I'll be back in the next video and talking about the team specifically. And yeah, hopefully this goes well, and we'll see if I'll continue some more discussion videos like that. And yeah, so thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.